Ever look at a messy graph full of squiggly lines and wonder how on earth chemists can instantly see a 3D molecule hidden inside it? Well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're putting on our detective hats to decode FTIR Spectra. Using Dr. Chem's incredibly detailed lecture as our guide, we're going to break down the unique visual fingerprints left behind by alkanes, alkenes, alkynes, aromatics, and aldehydes. Trust me, by the end of this explainer, you're going to look at these charts in a completely new way. So here's our roadmap. We'll start with 1, decoding molecular fingerprints. Then move into 2, alkanes, saturated foundation. After that, 3, alkenes and alkynes, adding bonds. Followed by 4, aldehydes, catching the carbonyl. And finally, 5, the detective toolkit.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, decoding molecular fingerprints.
Okay, so the whole mechanism here basically boils down to tracking how specific bonds vibrate at really specific frequencies when we expose them to infrared light. We measure these frequencies in a unit called Wavenumbers. You can actually think of molecules a lot like tiny springs attached to weights. A heavier atom or a looser bond is going to vibrate completely differently than a lighter atom or a really stiff bond. By mapping out exactly which wave numbers absorb the light, we create a highly diagnostic molecular fingerprint. And that brings us to the absolute golden rule of FTIR analysis. Seriously, if you only remember one thing today, make it the 3000 wave number line. It is literally our critical boundary dividing saturated molecules from unsaturated ones. If you look below 3000 and your carbon-hydrogen stretching peaks are strictly over there, you're dealing with saturated, sp3 hybridized carbons. But the very second those peaks cross the line and appear above 3000, boom, you have immediate proof of unsaturated sp2 or sp hybridized carbons. That means double or triple bonds are in the mix.
Moving right along to Section 2, alkanes, the saturated foundation.
Let's look at a real-world example with octane, a straight-chain, fully saturated alkane. Notice how the data perfectly obeys that golden rule we just talked about? The sp3 carbon-hydrogen stretch sits strictly below our 3000 threshold, clustered tightly right around the 2850 to 3000 mark. There are absolutely no peaks crossing into that territory above 3000. It's a clean, textbook confirmation of a completely saturated structure. Now looking at decane, we get another really vital clue. Decane has 10 carbons, right? So it has a nice long chain of CH2 or methylene groups. Do you see that sharp little spike way down at exactly 720 wave numbers? That's a specific bending motion, often called a rocking motion, that only happens with open chains of 4 or more CH2 groups. Whenever you spot that peak at 720, the molecule is basically waving a flag saying, hey, I have a long straight carbon tail. So to quickly summarize our alkane toolkit, don't let a seemingly simple spectrum fool you. You always want to hunt for these 4 structural signatures to lock in a saturated carbon backbone. Check for your CH stretch just under 3000, your methylene scissoring bend right around 1465, your methyl bend near 1375, and if it's a long chain, that distinct rock down at 720. Spot those and your foundation is totally solid. Next up, Section 3, alkenes and alkynes, adding bonds. Let's see what happens when we start adding double bonds. As we cross our 3000 boundary line, notice how the sp2 carbon-hydrogen stretch for alkenes pops up at values strictly greater than 3000, usually between 3010 and 3095. Remember our spring analogy? That's the tighter spring of the double bond vibrating. Plus, alkenes introduce a whole new region to investigate, the out-of-plane bending peaks that show up between 1000 and 650 wave numbers. And this is where FTIR gets incredibly powerful. We're not just asking, is there a double bond? We can actually solve the exact 3D shape, the stereochemistry, just by looking at these out-of-plane bending regions. For instance, we can easily distinguish a cis arrangement, where groups are on the same side, creating a strong band near 700, from a trans arrangement, which shifts all the way up near 970. Monosubstituted double bonds? They give us 2 unmistakable strong bands near 990 and 910. Now, when we're hunting for the triple threat of alkynes, positioning is everything. Terminal alkynes, meaning the triple bond is hanging off the very end of the chain, give this super prominent sharp signal way up at 3300 for the SPCH stretch, plus a really distinct C triple bond C stretch right at 2150. But internal or non-terminal alkynes, they act like stealthy intruders. Since they're buried in the middle, they lack a hydrogen on the triple bond, so that 3300 peak completely vanishes. And because the molecule is more symmetrical, that 2150 stretch becomes super weak or even entirely absent. All right, section 4, aldehydes catching the carbonyl.
When we suspect an aldehyde is our culprit, we're basically looking for two massive clues. First, a dominating, sword-like sequel of stretch between 1740 and 1725 wave numbers. But hey, lots of things have carbonyls, right? Ketones, esters. So what makes an aldehyde unique? It's the pairing with an unmistakable CH doublet. The hydrogen attached directly to that carbonyl carbon creates a pair of weak bands. We sometimes call them fangs, one near 2850 and the other near 2750.
You can see perfectly how this plays out in real data with non-aldehyde. Look at that massive, unmissable drop around 1725 for the carbonyl stretch. Now look just below our 3000 boundary. See those two little fangs? That exact doublet at 2850 and 2750 allows us to instantly, confidently single out aldehydes from any other carbonyl compound. The lower frequency one is usually much easier to spot, simply because it isn't buried under your standard alkane CH stretches. Now this is really fascinating. Look at how the environment around the carbonyl changes its signal in crotonaldehyde. Here we have a C-to-C double bond right next to the carbonyl, creating what we call a conjugated system. This conjugation literally weakens the double bond character of the carbonyl slightly, which physically shifts the band to a lower frequency. So instead of the mid-1700s, it drops down towards 1700 or 1680. It's a brilliant example of a molecule telling us exactly who its neighbors are. Taking it one step further with benzaldehyde, the conjugation is now with a massive phenyl group, an entire aromatic ring. This shifts the carbonyl stretch even lower, often pushing it to 1700 or below. But because we have that aromatic ring, we actually get bonus clues. We can spot the aromatic CC stretches in the middle region, and we also get a really strong aromatic out-of-plane bending around 700 to 900 wave numbers, confirming we've got a mono-substituted benzene ring attached right to our aldehyde. Bringing it all together in Section 5, the detective toolkit. If we scan right to left across our spectrum timeline, it builds a perfectly structured diagnostic narrative. Starting in the fingerprint region on the right, we check around 700 to 1,000 for alkene or aromatic out-of-plane bending to give us the 3D shape. Moving left, we hit the 1700 zone, that blaring alarm for a carbonyl C-double bond O stretch. Around 2150, we look for the stealthy alkyne triple bond. Then the absolute most crucial checkpoint, that 3000 wave number boundary. Below it, sp3 saturated carbons. Above it, sp2 unsaturated carbons. And finally, way up at 3300, the sharp spike of a terminal alkyne. You now have a highly structured visual roadmap to translate a series of seemingly random dips and spikes into a crystal clear 3D picture of a molecule's architecture. With this incredible ability to read these fingerprints directly from the raw data, what invisible compound will you decode next in your own lab? Keep your eyes sharp, always trust the wave numbers, and happy analyzing.